tardes. Good afternoon. Now I'm leaving my Juan Mateo personality and go back to Nicolás Jodal. Welcome, thanks for coming. This is my sport presentation. I usually give a presentation on GeneXus and another one on issues that I think interesting. And this presentation, I call this presentation Exaptations. This is a strange name, but I'm going to tell you why. I want to start this presentation with a story, something that happened to me in my work in this place called Paris Television, where household supplies were sold, and I started selling these household supplies. And the world changed. There you can see a motorbike, but we never sold a motorbike. In the 80s, you never sold a motorbike. But we sold a lot of color TV. I used to sell a lot of color TV sets, and something happened to me in that time. Somebody, a lady, came into the store and asked me for a TV, color TV. I offered her the 20 inches Grundig set, which was the most expensive, the best. She said no. Then I offered her more expensive. Finally, I reached the 14 inches. He said no. I asked her, well, why? No, I want to buy a black and white TV set, not a color TV. And I asked her why. No, because I'm a movie critique, and the best Woody Allen movies are in black and white, so I want to see all of them in black and white. Finally, I sold her a TV set in black and white. But that was the first time where I was on the side of technological innovation, and somebody on the other side was questioning, doubting about that technological innovation. And all my life I have found this situation several times. Now I don't sell color TV any longer, but I'm talking about the importance of making applications in mobile phones. And I find the same questions when people said we had to shift to Windows, to web. The questions are more or less the same. Technology may change, but questions are rather similar. Let's see some of them. I think some of the questions, somebody tells me I don't want to learn anything new. Another one says that phones are for talking. Or how many smartphones are actually in this area. And the last one says, can I do it with GeneXus? These are some of the questions that I hear every day. The first one, I don't want to learn anything new, is very important, and I have nothing to clarify. The third one, if there are smartphones, well, the issue here is to calculate the right time. If I take too long, everybody would be doing it. If I take too little time, it won't be possible. And the fourth question, you will evaluate the answer by yourself. So the second one is pending. Why am I going to do an application in a mobile if mobiles are done for talking? And the short answer is because phones are like feathers. And with this I mean to explain that, I must show this little animal, the Sinosauropteryx. Is the first animal that is known to start using feathers. And you can see it has feathers, but not wings. So he didn't use its feathers for flying. So feathers were invented, so to speak, not to fly, but to regulate body temperature. So this animal discovered that if it opened the feathers when it was warm and closed them when it was cold, he could regulate its temperature better than other animals. And then throughout time, when I jump with its feathers, I can jump more than others, and finally the feathers were used to fly. This is what in biology is called exaptation. That is the title of this presentation. A characteristic that was developed, a feature that was developed for a particular advantage and finally was extremely useful for other applications. Is a sign of adaptation. This adaptation has occurred in biology. Feathers are a classical example, but in technology, these adaptations occur more frequently. There is a lot of technologies and inventions that were used for one task were finally used for different tasks. Internet was initially considered for nuclear tests, and then it became extremely useful for communications. Therefore, what I mean is that the smartphones are an exaptation. An exaptation for what? For what are they actually useful? And to answer that question, I have to introduce this person. This gentleman is called B.J. Fogg. He is a doctor in psychology in the Stanford University. He has a lab called the Stanford Persuasive Tech Lab, and he devotes himself to study the reasons of behavior. What causes us to behave in a particular manner? I'm going to refer in this presentation to daily behavior. What is the reason for me to make a donation, to carry a certain task, to leave that task? BJ has a quite interesting model of our behavior. So I'm going to show you an initial stage of this model. I'm going to use only the part that is interesting for this presentation. BJ, about our behavior, BJ says, everything starts with a motivation. To carry on a task, we must be motivated. I'm going to establish a very simple example. Low means less motivated, high, more motivated. The ability. I have an ability, I have a task that I may be able to perform or not. It may be hard to do or easy to do. What BJ says is rather simple. If I have to perform a task for which I'm not motivated and it's hard to do, this will not happen. If somebody tells me that in order to make a donation of $10,000 in order to measure the accurate, exact diameter of Urano, it's difficult for me because I don't have $10,000 and I'm not interested in Urano's diameter. On the other hand, if I have to do a task that is easy for me to do, and I am motivated to do it, if I am in a supermarket and I am told that I can donate 1 peso for the blood bank, I'm going to do it. So I have an area where things happen and an area where things don't happen. In the BJ model, there are two things. The perceived motivation, the perceived ability. But there is another factor. That is the supermarket cashier who asked me if I wish to donate. So there is a trigger. The third component is a trigger that triggers the action. Things happen according to this model because I am motivated, because I have the necessary ability to do so, and because the action was triggered. Perfect, thank you. These three elements reflect in an equation. A behavior is equal to a motivation, an ability, and a trigger. If the three components, the three factors occur, then we do things. That is the general idea of this model. Let's see motivation first. What BJ says is that things that motivate us include three components, three basic components. First of all, pleasure and pain. Here you can see a picture where a lion is trying to avoid pain. The behavior of the lion is trying to avoid loss. And what is the pleasure here? I think that the porcupine may feel the pleasure to avoid the lion. So, we behave trying to obtain pleasure and avoid pain. The second element is anticipation, when we do something in order to obtain a result. If you see two persons who are focused and concentrated in carrying out a task, here you can see them. Both of them are extremely motivated, very serious, and doing their work. One, because of hope, that is the lion, and the other one that, of course, does not wish to be eaten. So here we have hope and expectation and fear. And the third one is the social motivator. When we do something to be accepted in our social group, or we avoid doing something in order to avoid being expelled from our social group. When I saw this picture, I'm still doubting whether they were yawning or they were intending to bite the lion, the third lion. This is lion motivation. Let's go now to ability.
This is first we have motivation and then we have ability. BJ is a psychologist. He's not an engineer. In our case, what's a business? We try for someone to be more able. If an engineer asks us, how can we make someone more able in his task? Which is our first answer. We either train him or we give him the manual. And what BJ says is that we are doing everything the wrong way, which is true, because people are lazy. People don't want to read manuals. So what we need to do is something else. And what BJ says is that what we have to do is to make the task simpler. That is to say, our job is not to send people to read the manual, but to make the job simpler. What do we mean by simple here? And here we have a sort of chain of 6 components, and those components have a link. If the weakest link breaks, then the whole simplicity breaks, the whole magic of simplicity breaks. 6 factors are, first, time. If I have to perform a task that will take a long time, it will be complex for me. It won't be simple. Second, money. If I need to perform a task that requires a lot of money, then it won't be simple. The thing is that there's a relationship between these two. It's very normal that if I'm a teenager, I will have a lot of time, but not a lot of money. So for me, a task will be simple if I'm a teenager, if it takes time but doesn't require money. On the contrary, if you're older and you have maybe more money, you will probably not have as much time. So the definition of simplicity is the opposite. So a task, even though it might require some money, if it saves up time, then for me that's a simple task. So one of the important consequences of this model is that simplicity depends on people. It depends on the scarcest resource they have. Then we have physical effort. Then we have brain cycles and mental effort. If I have to think a lot, then I won't like it. Then we have the social deviance. And then we have the, if it is a routine task. BJ says that we are extremely routine-oriented, so we have to do something that's not part of our routine, then it becomes complex. So simplicity is a function of our scarcest resource, one of these 6 resources listed here. So it will depend who I am targeting this for. If I am making an application for teenagers, so then there's no problem in this requiring more time, but it needs to be free. If this is being done for older people, well, then it might cost something, but it doesn't have to require a lot of time. And through this model, we see how great the model of Steve Jobs with iTunes was. What he did was, by pricing songs at $1, he improved the ability of the task. He made it more simple, so everyone who could afford $1 could download it. They don't have to spend a lot of time, and the amount of money that they have is not a lot, so that's why it was so successful. So we have motivation and then ability on the other axis. But there's an interesting thing here. There's a relationship between ability and motivation. Let's suppose that we're here. If I have a task that's difficult and I'm not motivated, let's suppose that I'm designing an application and the people who I will be targeting it to are not motivated. So I need to change the application. Almost everyone in this case, including psychologists here, are wrong when they try to move the spot here. They try to move it upwards towards motivation. So if the job is not done, then I need to motivate people, to motivate them in order to perform the task. What BJ says is that there's a simpler way for this, which is to move the arrow on the other direction, to make the task simpler. Because it is much easier to make a task simpler than to try to motivate people. People don't like to be motivated. They resist to being motivated. I still remember my grandmother trying to convince me to eat liver just by saying the liver had iron and it was good for my bones. And I really resisted that because I wasn't motivated. So that's a part where we have motivation and ability. But nothing happens if we don't have a trigger, if we don't have the supermarket cashier, if we asking us if we want to donate the money I mentioned before. So what we will have here is an area where on top of the area triggers work. If I trigger something on top of that area, things will work, so it will be a success, and below that area, things will fail. So those are the 2 areas we have. One of the things that happen in the modern world is that we're constantly bombarded by ineffective triggers, things that are useless. For example, someone who wants me to perform a task, maybe I'm very motivated by this is very hard. If I receive an email telling me that if I run a marathon tomorrow, I will receive $1 million. I'm really motivated because I will be winning $1 million. But I'm not able to do it unless I'm Miguel Bresner. I won't be able to do that tomorrow. So if I'm constantly bombarded by this, I will be frustrated. On the other hand, maybe we have something that I can do, something that's easy, but I'm not motivated. Once again, maybe if I'm told, do you want to donate 1 peso or 2 pesos to measure the diameter of the Uranus planet? Well, I'm not motivated for that, so I will feel distance from that. This will be distracting. So it's very important to be able to place triggers in the right place and not in the wrong places. If there's a company in this planet that has known how to master this art of sending triggers in the right time and for making them work, which company is it? Do you know which it is? Not Apple. Who sends perfect triggers? Not Google. Amazon. Not Amazon. Mike will give you an Amazon tablet if you have the right answer. Facebook. Silvia Chevi, who told me about this. She is the one. She's a winner. Facebook, it's great. This happened to me the other day. I was working and I received an email. Maxi Pereira tagged a photo of you. I invited Maxi to state that this is true, right? So I'm working and it says, Maxi Pereira tagged a photo of you. What do you do when you receive such an email and you're working? You continue to work. You jump into it. You log on and you take a look at the picture. And then you get back to work, of course. What do? You take a look at the picture, and when you take a look at the picture, you find that there are two other people who want to be your friends. You see who they are, you accept them, then you read what was posted on your wall, then you make comments, and it takes you 45 minutes, and you spent 45 minutes on Facebook. You didn't receive an email from Facebook telling you that you're from the Facebook team and I would like you to spend 45 minutes on my site. No, Maxi Pereira, you received an email where Maxi Pereira tagged a photo of you. So what this asks is just a very simple action. You just have to click on it. And that's one of the secrets of triggers. Not to request a great action, but a chain of triggers, of small triggers, doing minor actions. But there are different types of triggers. According to the area where I want to place a trigger, they will be different. For example, if I want someone to perform a task and he's already motivated for doing it, but it's difficult for him, then it will be area 1. So what we need is to be facilitators. That is we have high motivation and low ability. And what does Facebook do here? This is a case of someone who has not logged into Facebook for a long time. So Facebook sends a message to the person where you know how to sign in. So it's a facilitator. It facilitates signing in. This does not try to motivate you. It does not tell you how well you will feel if you log in. It will just tell you how easy it is to perform that behavior. On the contrary, this is maybe somewhat more complicated. This is called the spark, which is when I want someone to perform a task, an easy task, but the person is not motivated. So that the trigger there needs to also have a motivator there. It will not act on itself. For example, I can motivate by hope or fear. So I will have to send an email that something is on fire, or maybe I can threat him. And what Facebook used to do here, this is always complicated in terms of motivating people. Facebook did this, but no longer does. I've had a hard job finding this. And Facebook used to say someone logged on to Facebook and says such and such a person has signed in, and Facebook didn't tell me to log in. Facebook tried to attract me in order to sign in order to see which other people had signed in. This no longer works. And this is a consequence of one of the companies that better manages this idea in terms of how it had to withdraw in terms of motivating people. And the final thing is what happens when I had people who are motivated and who have high ability. This works as a traffic light. It just tells you do it. And this is a case I was telling you about Maxi Pereira. This doesn't say anything, it just says do it. It's a case of the traffic light. When you see the traffic light and you're driving, this does not motivate me. It doesn't say it's good to respect the signal because we avoid clashes. All it says is green, move. And that's a signal. As in every good theory, this has some corollaries or some results that allow us to reason on this, which are quite relevant for us. The first is the following. Just assume that for some reason we are doing an application in smart devices and people are not using it. They just don't use it and we don't know what to do about this. Usually, we will think that maybe people are not using it because they're not motivated, so we need to motivate them. And what BJ says is that that's the hardest way to do it. And when something is not working, what you need to do is first to analyze triggers. If you are triggering the right triggers, or if you're triggering any trigger at all, and if this is being targeted at the right people, then we need to improve ability. Ability was for something to be simple, you don't have to use the most scarce resource of that person. And finally, then we have motivation. Motivation is the hardest thing, and we need to leave that for the end. That's the first corollary. Then we have about triggers, Facebook triggers. Always an effective trigger requires simple behavior, small behavior, and not a difficult behavior. This is something that's very common when people are selling sports shoes or sneakers in Uruguay. People don't tell you, we want you to buy sneakers. No, what they say is, why don't you start jogging or exercising? Why don't you start running 5 kilometers and then 10 kilometers? Because the consequence of that behavior will be for people to buy sneakers. So what they're developing is a chain of triggers in order to achieve a more complex behavior. Finally, this is so complex and sophisticated that we need to start with simple things. You need to begin with something simple and then make it grow. Google, Facebook, and Yahoo started with something very simple. Google was just text. Well, maybe behind this, they had something that was very complex. But for me, in terms of the search, it was very simple. I just had to write down a word, and then that was it. Yahoo at the beginning was a directory list, and Facebook was just a list of faces. A book of faces. It was a very simple thing, and then they expanded that success based on a simple thing that is successful. You have to make it grow. You don't need to start on a complex thing. So how do you expand it? First, you have to create a routine. Try to make it a routine. Then you have to try other simple behaviors. Then you have to try with harder behaviors. And only then think about scaling it to reaching more people, because simplicity depended on the type of person. For a teenager, a simple thing is one thing, but for an older person, a simple thing is something else. So you need to leave that for the end. And especially the most important thing that BJ mentions is how to do applications in cell phones is to put, he says, putting hot triggers, immediate triggers, in the path of motivated people. Immediate trigger, a hot trigger, is something that can be done right away. When the cashier at the supermarket asks me whether I want to donate 1 peso for a blood bank, that's immediate because I give the money right away. When I'm watching TV and there's an ad that I see, it is not immediate because I cannot buy something while I'm watching TV. I need to do that afterwards. So the way to success is putting hot triggers in the path of motivated people. And this takes me to the initial question. Why did I think that telephones were an exaptation? And this was the first animal that used feathers for flying, which is the exaptation of intelligent telephones. They are the best channel known today for putting hot triggers in the way of motivated people. They're a huge tool for the behavior of people. Much before Silvia Chevi told me the story about BJ Fogg, this had already happened to me. I had found this with an example. But one thing before that. Why is that? Why do I tell you that a smartphone works like that? BJ says that the component has 3 things. First, we have an emotional relationship with a smartphone. From Steve Jobs up to now, we really love our phones. We buy them because they're nice, they're cute, so we have an emotional relationship. Second, we always have it. And third, same as a wristwatch. And the third is that they're a sort of magic wand in the sense that they are useful for other things too. The wristwatch is only useful for telling me the time. Every time they try to add it, features that never worked. But in terms of smartphones, they did. So the fusion of all three things is that they are a tremendous channel for adding hot triggers in the way of motivated people. And the example that I wanted to tell you about with Sebastian, we started reading a book which is for our boy. And one day we came up with the idea, I don't know how you call that exercise where you hang from a bar and you try to sort of make push-ups in the air. And I couldn't do it even once, but I really wanted to be able to do that. And by chance I found an application that's called Pull-Ups. I downloaded it to my cell phone and it said, first of all, set a goal. And my goal was, I just wanted to be able to do 10 push-ups. It didn't say do it 10 times. It just asked, how many times did you do it? So I put 1. And then it said, do this. Now, do 3. So I did 3, clicked on a button, and it said, wait 40 seconds. And then it said, do 4, until it was over, and I was told, this is over, come back tomorrow. On the following day, I had to follow whatever instructions the phone gave me. Until one day, it told me, no, just do 10. And I was able to do 10 pull-ups, 11 pull-ups, sorry. So this is just a personal story that I have, and this happens to anyone. People who run, for example, they probably run with a smartphone that tells them how many kilometers they have run, or people who run a bike, or people who have heart problems, etc. So this is a tremendous tool. Smartphones are a tremendous tool for regulating behavior. And this is more or less what I wanted to tell you about. For us, if we are going to do intelligent applications, it's important to know this model and to see how important it is. When we are asked, what is a telephone good for? Of course, it's very good for talking, but it's an exaptation. It's also useful to guide our behavior. It's the most effective channel in order to put triggers, immediate triggers, in the way of motivated people. I hope that this presentation is an exaptation in itself. I did it for that purpose, so that you know a model for making intelligent applications. But I also hope that this is also useful for something else for you. Same as this guy here found another use for feathers. What I hope is that you'll be able to find usefulness in this presentation in terms of your personal stuff. We all want to have good behaviors, and what BJ says is a way for all of us in terms of creating habits. We need to change our behavior by creating habits, and the way for doing it is not trying to do the most difficult thing in the world, but as Facebook and Google did, we need to start by small actions. And BJ says, let's assume that I want to floss my teeth. Let's not think that we're going to floss all of our teeth. Just start with 1 tooth. What's the minimum action there? Just floss 1 tooth. Second, do that action behind something that's already a routine for you, maybe after brushing your teeth. If it's a routine for you to brush your teeth, then you might floss just 1 tooth. After that, you have to train the cycle, repeat it many times, and only then will you be able to floss every tooth that you have. That's BJ's criterion in order to turn things into a habit. That is to say, form habits, change lives. Thank you very much.